Good evening, everybody. A new Fox News poll shows I've got to do this again. Sorry.
Yep, I'll start you out again.
I could see knew it didn't make any sense, but I went with it anyway. Good evening, everybody. A Fox News poll shows Joe Biden now surging into the lead ahead of President Trump, 50% to 48%. That's a surge, at least in the northeastern part of the country. And that comes just 1 week out from the first presidential debate. Another YouGov New York Post poll puts Biden ahead of Trump, 41% to 39%. The timing of these really bad polls from entities owned by the Murdoch family, it's important to understand the context. They come after President Trump said nobody can ever trust Fox News as long as Paul Ryan is on the board of directors. Is the anti-Trump Murdoch empire striking back? It looks like that to some. And if any issue nails Biden's coffin shut, it will be the issue of his invitation to the invasion of illegal aliens, millions of them in 3 short years. Or is it 3 long years? And Tuesday, senior Biden advisor Tom Perez defended Biden's massive amnesty proposal. But then Perez got hit with inconvenient facts. A new CBS News poll shows 62% of registered voters want illegal aliens deported. All of them. Watch Perez squirm.
This is both the humane thing to do, the right thing to do, and the smart thing to do.
And yet, Tom, a lot of voters seem to think it's not the smart thing to do. CBS News polling recently found that 62% of Americans are in favor of a national program to deport all undocumented immigrants, all 11 million of them. So how much support do you think there would be for the White House plan that was announced today?
I'd love to sit down with your polling team and show them how they've gotten this wrong.
I'll bet he would. 62%, the CBS News poll. Well, seldom are Marxist Dems caught in complete fabrications, but Tom Perez was clearly squirming there. Americans want illegal aliens deported, and the view is widespread. Americans have had it with the Biden assault on America. The invasion of illegal aliens at the southern border has ensured that. And with us now to take up that invasion is Mark Morgan, the former commissioner of the U.S. Customs and Border Enforcement. And it's great to have you with us, Mark. That was an amazing video with Tom Perez. Some people have called him a race agent, a race hustler, whatever. But to see him have to look at that poll, 62% of likely voters want illegal aliens deported. All of them. All of them. Your reaction to that poll?
You and I have talked about this before. I really never thought we should, but I never thought that we would see a poll where the overwhelming majority of Americans support the lawful deportation of those individuals that are here in the country illegally. And I think it goes to the heart that this administration has overplayed their hands across this country. I think Americans have woken up to understand that what's happening at our borders, it isn't about immigration. It's about border security, which is synonymous with our safety and national security. But a part of that element, Lou, again, you know this, we talk about it, is that if we want to stem the flow of illegal immigration, one of the legs of the three-legged stool is we have to remove people here that are illegally. We have to send a message to the entire world that if you illegally enter and you make it in the United States, you're not going to be able to stay here. And I think Americans are finally realizing that.
I wonder, too, though, if Americans are realizing that none of those deportations will take place until after the November 5th election, and that the Marxist Dems have already been caught and revealed to be trying to sign up those illegals to vote wherever they may be in the country.
Yeah, look, I think you're spot on. If you look at all the polls right now, the majority of the polls has border security at a minimum in the top 5. Some polls are saying that border security is number one, number two issue for a lot of Americans. You're seeing every single poll. It doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat-leaning poll or conservative-leaning poll. It's got President Trump in many double digits as far as the country's confidence in President Trump to actually secure the border and change the tide of illegal immigration. And so I think this has been, and I think it's going to continue to be, and I think November 5th, border security is going to be one of the leading issues for a lot of Americans when they pull that lever to vote come November.
Yeah, I agree with you too about the fact I never dreamed we'd see immigration itself at the top of polls for voter interest and commitment and energy. It's just remarkable that it's risen to this level, which says to me this: this administration has not only overplayed its hand, they have revealed truths about illegal immigration that the left managed to hide for years and for years, thinking that they could get away with saying illegal immigration has no cost. It is not competitive with minorities in this country, when it is all of the above and far more. This is a moment in which we're finding out that a lot of our friends in the hemisphere are not our friends. And the idea that this administration baldly and just in our faces turned over the southern border, not to the Border Patrol, but to the Mexican drug cartels. And it's that straightforward, and they get it because crime is rife in everyone's community, nearly everyone's community. The deaths that are caused by fentanyl continue to just astound us. We are not inured to that. We have not been desensitized to the point that we can accept 100,000 deaths a year in this country. All of that is on Joe Biden, and it's going to be on his back in those voting booths this November 5th.
Yeah, Lou, look, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm sorry. I know I'm bouncing my head up and down like a bobblehead as you're talking, because I completely agree with every word you just said. Look, there's a couple of very important things. First off, on our partners, we have to recognize Mexico is not a true partner of our country. They're not a true ally any longer, and they haven't been for a very long time. So we have to change how we view Mexico if we're really going to take specific steps needed to stop the chaos and lawlessness of the border. The other thing, too, is I think you're spot on right now with respect to the contrast between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Think about this. I'll give you an example. In the same week where we had another a young, beautiful woman that was allegedly savagely raped and killed by an illegal alien, Rachel Morin, the same week where her alleged killer was illegal alien was captured, and the same week that we had a 13-year-old young girl that was tied up to her 13-year-old friend while he had to sit there and watch her be raped by an illegal alien. At the same week where those two incidents were announced, what was President Biden doing? Announcing amnesty for 500,000 illegal aliens in this country. I think this represents the quintessential contrast between a Biden administration and a Trump administration.
Oh, I think so. I think you're exactly right. What I'm concerned about is I don't hear what the Republicans are doing to go after those registrations of illegal immigrants, whether it's in California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, whether it's in Texas, wherever it is in the country. I haven't heard the RNC step up and say, this is what we're doing. We've got this many lawyers working on this. We have this many volunteers working on whatever the other parts of the electoral process that need guarding are. It's outrageous that we're not hearing more from the Republican Party itself.
Yeah, Lou, this reminds me of conversations you and I had years ago where, you went after the Republicans as well. And at first, I kind of pushed back on you a little bit. Well, I've come full circle, and you were right back then years ago, and you're right today. I'll give you an example. Speaker Johnson of the Republican Party, Speaker of the House. Remember, he promised American people, these are his words, quote, I'm going to hold the line with respect to HR2 when it came to giving a funding to foreign countries to help secure their borders. HR2 is the strongest piece of border security legislation that was passed by the House. It was well over a year ago. And then inexplicably at the midnight hour, he walked backwards. He walked away from the commitment to the American people. He let HR2 fall on the floor of the cutting room floor and gave $95 billion to multiple countries to secure, defend, and protect their borders. Look, there's clearly this White House, supported by the Democrats, have created the chaos and lawlessness at our borders. But the Republicans, once again, have failed to show the political courage, strength, and will to do what they can to stop the crisis. And again, I think the RNC2 is a good example. I just read a state, I forgot which state it was, governor just signed a bill mandating that you had to show that proof of U.S. citizenship before you could vote. Look, the RNC should be screaming. Every state should be moving towards a bill similar.
Absolutely, without any question at all. And those who say that we do not need photo ID in this country to vote are outrageous. They want to cheat the election just as they did in 2020. And nothing is perfect in terms of a deterrent, but photo ID is certainly one of them for voting in this country.
Yeah, Lou, real quick, sorry to interrupt. I just thought of when you were saying that. Remember 2020, right? We all had to show a vaccination card, right? I'm a U.S. citizen, and I had to show that card before I could board a plane and do half the other things that I need to do to function in life. But when it comes to the most fundamental, most important thing that relates to our constitutional republic, voting, especially in a national election, no, we're just going to take your word for it. That's absurd.
It is absurd, and it's also the way in which we see history reversed and our elections overturned, as we did in 2020. Of course, the Marxist Dems would like nothing better than to have another run at exactly that kind of result. Mark, we thank you for being with us as always. Take care, my friend. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lou.
In other news, Joe Biden's brain malfunctioned as he announced plans for a mass amnesty for illegal aliens. Have a look.
Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure you're going to do so.
Biden's brain is obviously turning into mush, and his policies, understandably, have been a disaster for America. But the people around him are without conscience. Those who are driving these policies aren't slowing down. And meanwhile, Breitbart News' Bradley Jay reporting that 3 key events transpired on a single day in 2022 that led to all of the lawfare and political persecution of President Trump and other Republicans for the past 4 years. On November 18th, 2022, Joe Biden appointed special counsel Jack Smith. Second, Fani Willis's special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, was visiting that day at the White House. And then third, high-ranking DOJ official Michael Colangelo submitted his notice to leave his federal post and join the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's office. The level of collusion and orchestration here is astounding. It looks a lot like corruption, doesn't it? Hunter Biden is back in the news. I'll bet you missed him. This time, it's because of emails showing that a top Chinese Communist Party leader wanted to meet with him to, guess what? To talk some business. The emails were sent in 2013, around the time Hunter accompanied then Vice President Joe Biden on a trip around Asia that included, of course, China. It's not clear whether the meeting actually happened, but if it did, it would just be another item in the Biden family's litany of corruption. With us to discuss that tonight is Eric Eggers. He's the vice president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of the book Fraud: How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. And we recommend Eric's book to you highly. Thanks for being with us, Eric. I want to just start with the latest revelation about Hunter Biden. I mean, this reminds us, it seems like we can't get away from it, about what this is all about. It is a corrupt crime family, the Bidens, and there is no escaping it, but there sure is a massive cover up around them.
Yeah, Hunter Biden, I think, represents a lot of things to the American people. He's sort of a Rorschach test, depending upon where you're coming from an ideological perspective. I think you and I, Lou, and the people that are watching this program see Hunter Biden as a classic example of a dual system of justice. Remember, the fact that he finally was convicted on charges only happened because a very smart judge quashed the sweetheart deal that would have prevented Hunter Biden from being prosecuted for real crimes, including potentially violating the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is, I think, the real story. And that's what these latest revelations, these emails from his Chinese business partners the day after he flies to China with his then vice president father, Joe Biden, aboard Air Force Two, and he's getting emails and questions like, hey, how did it go? And we'd like to do more business. And then 10 days later, Hunter signs his own sweetheart deal, maybe the OG sweetheart deal, where he gets this $1 billion plus joint venture fund with the Chinese government. And so I think the American people see Hunter Biden, see the fact that he's got no business acumen to speak of. Everything he's gotten, including lenient judicial findings, are because of his last name. And so I think that while some people may want to celebrate the fact that he's been convicted of these gun charges, I think the real fact and the real problem that's posed to America's national security interests are the fact that Hunter Biden, because of his last name and because of his association with Joe Biden, was able to help the Chinese government and other enemies of the United States acquire sensitive technology and make money off of it. That's the real story. That's what the Bidens have done, and that is the true scandal this century.
So the scandal, without question. I mean, you and Peter have been covering this brilliantly, and now we have congressional committees that have been investigating it persistently. But it doesn't seem like there's any movement right now on Capitol Hill. Give us your thoughts about where those investigations are in your judgment.
So I guess it depends on how you like to view the world, Lou. Some people would suggest that the fact that the investigations are ongoing is keeping the information in the news. And at the end of the day, ironically, you know, when Hunter Biden was trying to get his deal, the prosecutor was asked by the judge, well, what should the remedy be? And the prosecutor said, well, it's the political process. And I would say that the one smart thing that the congressional committees are doing is keeping this information in the news by having these drips of information. And so it does make it relevant for the American people with a potential political outcome in jeopardy in November. Remember, Lou, that because of what happened with Twitter and the censoring of the laptop 4 years ago, the American people were not able to vote on Joe Biden relative to the context of his association with Hunter Biden's business dealings. They were kept from that information by big tech and the FBI and other censorship mechanisms. But now, 4 years later, the American people can actually maybe make a decision based on what they think Joe Biden knew and how much money he made as a result of it. The New York Times actually confirms this. And that poll they did a few months ago, the one link between electoral outcomes and people in these swing states was, do you think Joe Biden made money off of Hunter Biden's business deals? When people think that Joe Biden made money off of it, they vote the other way. And I think this information, the more we can connect Joe Biden to these business deals, like putting him on Air Force Two with Hunter Biden, I think helps accomplish that goal.
Absolutely. It also is helpful to understand how the 2020 election was stolen. And that brings us to your book on fraud and how the Marxist left wants to steal the next election. Give us a sense of how they're doing right now. Are they going to achieve their goals, or are they going to be frustrated?
Lou, I sure hope not. I mean, I think we both hope not, right? We've lived through this already. And thank you for mentioning my book. You were so kind. You're actually the first person to have me on television when my book came out, Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election, which came out in August of 2018, by the way. And you and I had conversations about how vulnerable America's electoral systems were. We talked about the problems with voting rolls and how 1 in 8 voter registrations were wrong, and how the same people that fund lawyers to keep America's voter registrations from being vulnerable also fund groups that funnel as many people through those holes as possible. And then what happened? COVID happened. And the weakest part of our electoral system, mail-in balloting, became the most prominent way we cast ballots. And we were told, rather than being able to raise reasonable questions about accuracy and validity, we were told, oh no, it was the most secure and competent election ever. End of discussion. And if you dare raise questions about it, as you and others did, you were labeled treasonous and traitorous and potentially threatened with jail time. So, that's where we are. And then, so I think all those same vulnerabilities exist largely throughout the country, except for in Georgia, where they actually did pass meaningful election reforms, which, by the way, they were threatened with massive corporate boycotts, and they lost the Major League Baseball All-Star game as a result of it because of how angry the woke left was when Georgia passed common sense reforms. And so, I think a lot of those vulnerabilities exist, except for now what the Biden administration has done is they've leveraged and weaponized the federal government. In one of their first executive orders, we now have groups like HUD and the Department of Education and the Department of Agriculture, which if you want to get welfare, you're going to get registered to vote. This is what the Biden administration has decreed. If you want to get Pell Grants on college campuses, you can earn them by helping to register people to vote on college campuses. So they're weaponizing the federal government to act as a get-out-the-vote operation for the Biden administration. So it's a new tactic, but I think people are so fed up with the reality of what a Biden presidency looks like, it may not be enough to overcome all the efforts to cheat and steal.
Well, we certainly hope that that'll be the case. I wonder at this point if there is anything that the Republicans can actually do, because we're down to, we've got just a little over 4 months here. And the next thing we know, we have an election. I don't know if there's enough time to actually put in place defenses and watchers to make certain that 2020 doesn't happen all over again. What do you think?
It's a very real concern, but look, I think we're approaching the 4th of July holiday. It's a time where we want to kind of revel in the patriotic ideals and things that make America great. I think we've done a lot to be proud of as this country, and I think when people think about what our past looks like and they compare that with what the present administration is, I think all you can do is just continue to highlight how vulnerable the elections are, what reasonable reforms look like, the fact that the Biden administration recently granted pathways to citizenships for up to 500,000 spouses of current citizens who might be in this country illegally, I think will not help, because I think will add to the confusion that maybe some of these groups that try to get these non-citizens to vote, that may have one fewer obstacle in place just in terms of public awareness. So I think the more we can raise awareness of, hey, here's the issues, here's what common sense solutions look like. And oh, by the way, forget about efforts to cheat. What about just like voting on the merits of what the last 4 years have looked like? We just released a report, Lou, at the Government Accountability Institute about the ways in which the Biden administration just signed into law a bill that lets trial lawyers charge exorbitant fees on the backs of Marines who've been wounded and harmed because of the Camp Lejeune scandal. That's one example where here you have Marines who have served their country admirably, yet I think the money that they rightfully are owed is now being diverted to one of the more reliable voting blocks for Democrats as a result of this legislation. Those are the kinds of things that the more American people know about them, I think the more likely they are to not vote for Joe Biden in November.
Joe Biden and his regime are an absolute disgrace to the United States. It is a slur on this nation and our heritage that he is in that Oval Office. We thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for being with us here, and all the very best. Eric Eggers, thank you. And turning now to Joe Biden's policies hurting Americans. The IRS slapping Americans with a crushing $7 billion of tax penalties last year. That is a record high level, nearly a 300% increase from 2022, and most of those fines were against those who underpaid their estimated quarterly income taxes. So mainly the self-employed, freelancers, gig workers. The average fine also rose from $150 to $500. And some more shocking financial news. The U.S. national debt is on track to soar above $50 trillion over the next 10 years. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office, which projects that the federal debt will equal 122% of our annual economic output. Meanwhile, Louisiana is taking a stand for Christianity. Louisiana has just become the first state in the union to require the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. That includes classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. That's a win for the Judeo-Christian heritage that is America. Now to more amazing news. All of us know that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or those shopping channels the way they once did. They've been part of the cancel culture. So they want to pass the savings directly on to you. They're continuing the $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one problem, one solution product company. Since then, with the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about these products, and to get the word out, they're having a $25 extravaganza. Beach towels, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. Their 6-pack towel sets, $25. And a 4-pack dish towel set, you guessed it, $25. And now, for a limited time, you receive Mike's movies free with any purchase. You'll see these amazing offers at mypillow.com/Dobbs or call 800-977-9152 and use promo code Dobbs. And please join us for my podcast, The Great America Show, each and every day. My next guest recently lost his job as a track and field coach at Lake Oswego High School in Oregon. He didn't break any rules. He didn't commit a crime. John Parks simply called for Oregon to change state laws regarding transgenderism in sports. He wrote a letter proposing the creation of an open division for trans-identified athletes, but that was enough to get him fired from the high school. John Parks with us tonight to tell his side of the story. And John, great to have you with us. I have to say, by every metric I can think of, you've gotten a really raw deal from your high school. I don't understand it. You didn't insult anybody. You were straightforward. And I thought making a positive contribution to the dialogue that's going on across the country. Tell us what happened.
Well, probably longer than we have time for, but I was just on the phone for the last 40 minutes with the reporter from the local newspaper here trying to clarify things that their young reporter had kind of misinterpreted or taken in out of the context, and trying to get that straightened up because it's not a full picture. And I was the coach of the team for the last year and a half. I've had a great relationship there, I thought, but I went to my athletic director before the meet, and I said, can I write a letter to kind of explain how we need to change this, because this can't keep happening. I had the top girl in the state in the 400. She's number 6 in the nation, and I knew she was going to get challenged, and I wrote a letter, and I just said, we need to change this rule. I'm not trying to advocate for transgender athletes not having any competitive opportunities, but you can't allow them to just race evenly with women when there's advantages. We just looked at the Leah Thomas decision with the World Aquatics that said that for an athlete to be eligible to compete, they have to start hormonal training at age 12 before puberty starts and adolescence starts, which I think we all can understand is something that's, once you hit that as a male, you're going to develop advantages that just aren't reversed. And so
Right.
Last weekend we competed at the Nike High School Nationals. They have a policy of a 1-year hormonal treatment. That's maybe too late. You still get those advantages, like somebody taking steroids for years and then they quit and they're clear on the drug test like a month later, but they got all the advantages of it. Well, this is the same kind of thing. They've got all these advantages, and now we're going to let them compete. I'm a transgender supporter. I've got a couple in my family but they don't believe that they should be competing against female athletes. And that's the premise, is that they get equal rights and everything else. That part is fine. I'll support that. But I don't support it in an athletic field or track or wherever, because they are advantages. And I was going to speak up for it. And I'm a huge defender of Title IX, of female rights. I've been that way my entire life. My inspiration to get into coaching was because of my sister, who was one of the early athletes of that. And my sister became a federal judge, and she defended female rights up until her tragic death in 2020. And as a judge, so yeah, this whole thing got out of hand. I was told I could write this letter. Then I'm told the letter was a violation and against my free speech. I'm like, what I get, and my principal tells me last week as she dismisses me, this was not really in the initial thing. And she said, because the not only had my my athletic director supported me writing the letter ahead of time, then says to me a day and a half later, oh yeah, the associate director at the state, she's in favor of it. She supports it. She can't respond to your letter, but she agrees with you. So do I. My principal would later the next day say she agrees when I went to talk to her about making change for the future. Nowhere in the letter do I say they got to stop this kid from running this year. No, I just said we got to have changes. We need dialogue. We need to sit down intelligently and talk about what's obvious. If the international level, and I've coached I've coached Olympic athletes that won gold medal or silver medals. And well, actually, I coached one won a gold medal. I'm forgetting about him, but years ago. But I've coached athletes at the Olympic level, international level, college level, and also high school level. And I'm like, I felt like I'm someone who can do that. I wrote my letter as someone of that nature, and they said I was writing from LO, and I lost my constitutional rights to write a letter. And then brings up a letter I wrote to my state senator, who said, I said, can you clarify, because you told one of my parents that the state association was misinterpreting the letter. And I'm like, then can you give me clarity? And I said, because we can't have it again where this, we get on the medal stand and the athlete is booed off the medal stand as when they get their awards. Nobody should have to endure that. And I said, we've got to change this law to allow that person to still compete, but to also protect female rights. And I said, we can call it the We Cheer for All law. But did they, respond to my letter? No, they tell my principal, who then tells me, oh, you're not legally allowed to write your congressman for political speech. That's against the law in Oregon for you to do that, against our board policy. And so now, obviously, I've been trying to find an attorney that wants to represent me in this, because obviously that's got to be a First Amendment violation. You look at the Kennedy versus Bremerton decision. A lawyer friend of mine spoke to me and said, I've got a very close parallel to that in this case.
Well, the legal aspect of it is one thing. The decency of what you did, what you said, and what you tried to propose was manifest. There is no question about the reasoned approach you took to this. What is in question is how in the world could any school administrator, looking at the values that you're representing in that proposal, how in the world could they not want to have you as a standard bearer for their institution? It's outrageous. And I have to say, you shouldn't have any trouble finding a great lawyer to represent you, because I think, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even close to it, and I don't like many. But the reality is, you have a heck of a case.
I agree, Lou. And I think the thing, Lou, that that's why I went into the meeting after 10 days had passed and they'd done their investigation, quasi investigation, in my opinion. But because the person who made the accusations, I think, is from a neighboring school district, the Portland School District. And everything, as I was on the phone with, just before I got on the air with you, saying was found to be untrue, even by our own district, that I'd said anything appropriate things to the person on the transgender athlete on the award stand, that I had riled up the crowd, all these things, and all these things were proven false. And so I feel like I stand for what we all want. And all the parents on my team are stood behind me. Most all of them have signed a petition. They appeared at the school board meeting on Monday night. And so far, our district has just stonewalled, not wanting to really respond. I asked for the evidence of who it was I supposedly talked to, and that was supposedly inappropriate. And they said, we'll get it to you within 45 days, but I've got to have a response by next Wednesday. So in 6 days. So, I think they caved to the pressure of this district. And, we live in a society where people would rather do that to avoid a potential lawsuit from that direction. Well, I think, as you can see, as you just clearly stated, there's going to have to be one to defend myself. I've had some other schools that parents are trying to get me to apply, but because the way they're handling this, I'm hoping it's not too toxic. That's why I appreciate this opportunity to kind of set the record straight. And I'm trying to be fully transparent and letting people know the facts of this. And if they actually dig into the facts and don't just make a quick snap judgment, they'll see that I am the biggest defender of female athletics that you'll ever come across. No one will surpass me. Some may equal me, but no one's going to surpass it.
Right. Well, the fact is, Title IX is being eviscerated by the transgender movement. And until people come to their senses on that issue alone, this is, I mean, I can't even believe women athletes are rolling over for this thing and allowing 50 years of progress and women's athletics and sports to be just crushed with this transgender identification. I mean, it's just nuts to me.
Let me identify that for you, Lou. In classes that I sit in, I was a teacher for 29 years. There wasn't a teaching job at Lake Oswego, so I left another district. And I was in the classroom as an instructional assistant for kids with autism. And so I sat, because of my social studies background, in 5 or 6 social studies classes during the year, or in English classes. And the teachers would have topics, and sometimes something controversial like this kind of a topic would come up. And the teachers are kind of warning the students to be careful on how they're phrasing things, because they're being fair to them in the world. Like, you may get vilified for that. Well, that's highly unfortunate. The issue is, I know so many of the girls in my team and other female athletes at other schools whose parents have reached out to me in support of me have all said they're angry, they're frustrated, they feel like they can't do anything. I've got female athletes that I got 2 that are going to go on and be major stars. They've already set national records and state records and are going on to prominent schools like USC and Vanderbilt and so forth. And one is the all-time 100-meter record holder. But they're all afraid, if they speak up on record, that they're going to hurt themselves. And I don't speak of my girls, and women in general. I think from the WNBA and the in special sports and track and field and elsewhere down through the collegiate ranks and everywhere, there's silence, because this idea that if you speak up to something that's quite obvious, science, the Leah Thomas decision of World Aquatics by the Court of Arbitration of Sport made it clear there is an advantage, and we all know that. We don't have to be scientists or all that.
John,
but this is what
we're running out of time here, and I just want to say that I appreciate you taking the time. I hope you will keep us informed as to where what next steps you're taking. I have to say, good on you for standing up and speaking for yourself, and also to be speaking for your athletes. Women, the transgender movement is going to have to mature here, and they're going to have to do it very quickly, or women's athletics are going to be destroyed by it. And it doesn't take a genius in sports to figure that out. This is just a reprehensible moment in our history where John Parks is having to do the talking for the U.S. Congress, the American Medical Association. I mean, the burden that you have on you is remarkable. And what your school has done, in my opinion, is outrageous and frankly despicable. Their lack of courage and principle to stand for their institution and their students. Instead, I don't know what they think they're doing. I appreciate you being with us here, John. You get the last word.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I agree with you 100%. It's like, we've got to stand for female sports. Doesn't mean we can't also celebrate transgender athletes in some way in a different alternative, but we cannot ignore the rights of the female athletes, or there's no reason to have the division.
John Parks, thanks so much. We wish you all of the very best. God bless you, and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Turning to other stories making headlines, in Utah, a trans-identified man shot and killed their parents inside their home. A squad of police officers arrested Colin Troy Bailey, who goes by the name Mia, and no motive has been given for the brutal crime that rocked his community. Also, on Wednesday, Juneteenth celebrations in Oakland, California, well, they went awry. At least 4 people were taken to the hospital because they had been shot. The shooting erupted at an unsanctioned public event. One of the things you never want to do is go to an unsanctioned public event, apparently, in Oakland. It happened just before 9 p.m. near Lake Merritt. Here's footage from the scene.
No, they shooting at each other. These niggas shot.
I'm not sure why anyone would want to go to such an unsanctioned event. No fatalities. Here's the good news. No fatalities were reported. And we have an update for you on Tropical Storm Alberto. It touched down in Mexico earlier today. It's expected to continue moving west as tornado warnings are sounding in Texas. And I want to take just a moment to talk about Mike Lindell, who's made significant sacrifices for all of us in his push to secure our elections and save our republic. Join us in showing our appreciation for his efforts by sponsoring, attending, and/or watching our Birthday Bash Telethon on his behalf on Sunday, June 30th at renowned Puckett's Restaurant in Columbia, Tennessee. Please visit LindellOffenseFund.org for more information. Thank you. Mark Elias is a storied legal activist for the Democratic Party. He's a key field marshal in the Marxist Dems legal army. Few minds on the left are as dangerous as his. Now, Elias has plans to disrupt election integrity efforts taking place in Nevada. Elias is trying to stop the swing state Nevada from cleaning up its dirty voter rolls filled with suspicious addresses and names. Democrats oppose the effort because they believe dirty voter rolls actually help them electorally, and I don't think one could argue with that. But that's why Elias is fighting to stop it all. In other news, Judicial Watch has uncovered new evidence of how the federal government executed a censorship operation during the 2020 election. Under the scheme, state election officials flagged online content deemed, quote, misinformation and sent it to Homeland Security, the Homeland Security funded Center for Internet Security, and several other partners. They flagged content, including tweets about irregularities concerning mail-in voting. Judicial Watch's Chris Farrell is with us tonight to talk about this important story about transparency and security in our elections. Chris is board member of Judicial Watch, director of investigations and research. And Chris, great to have you with us as always. If you will, bring us up to date on all of the material that you're gathering up through FOIA and various other enterprises.
Well, I think the most important thing recently is continuing to document the really perverse relationship between Homeland Security, the so-called Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and the relationship of those two government agencies with their pet, supposedly outside advisory groups that were busy suppressing information, censoring people, not allowing any sort of discussion of things that might be disturbing to the regime, whether that's the stolen election in 2020 or anything having to do with COVID or any other sort of one of the propaganda points that they were not comfortable with. We now have, reams and reams of paperwork, all kinds of emails of them suggesting to each other who should be shut down, what stories should be suppressed. And it's really a very cozy little clique of people that all sort of know each other and promote each other. And the bottom line is the average American at home trying to get up to date on the news, sort of follow information, was being manipulated and lied to. And the government was controlling what was news and what was permissible to discuss.
We have a surveillance state. We also have a censorship state, and now there's no question about it. It's ugly, it's pervasive. just some of the acronyms, if I could. Internet Security Operation, the Center for Internet Security, CIS. Then you have CISA, the Center for Infrastructure. Let me get back to that. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And by the way, CISA, as we all know, its original purported purpose was to be a support for local elections and local election systems that were being hacked by foreign actors. It is the farthest thing from its principal role. It's just crazy what we've seen this government metastasize into.
Right. You'll recall there was also this effort to create basically a ministry of truth, right? Where they were going to establish what was dis, and malinformation. That went through 2 or 3 cycles and is still on the books. I mean, they now call it something else, but essentially the same functions are being done by the same government bureaucrats. And then they prop up these phony organizations like the Election Integrity Project, which is supposed to be, once again, a public-private partnership. And whenever you hear that expression, public-private partnership, think fascism, right? That's what it is.
You're exactly right.
Very, very cozy relationships with sort of, supposedly outside independent groups, but they're really sort of little, cheerleaders and precious little pets of the government agencies who, it gives the government agency an excuse to say, well, it's not us saying you can or can't do this. We have outside experts, and they're the ones who told us what to, look at and suppress or to censor in some way.
Yeah. The idea that these advisory groups somehow give them some sort of imprimatur of nonpartisanship, it's really a non-ideological fervor. We are watching a government that has become something so ignorant, so corrupt, that I don't know how we unwind this. First step is, of course, to get Donald Trump elected. But I mean, the real work starts after that, I think. What do you think?
It really does. But when you scroll through and you look at all these different groups, even like these phony supposed outside advisory groups, and you look at their board of directors and their leadership and all the who's who and what's what, it's all lefties.
To get rid of CISA, however you want to say it, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, it should take nothing more than just to defund them. And by the way, the Republican Congress should have done it early and often across the board, and of course they didn't. But they're going to. It looks like they're going to have an opportunity. But I would say that given all of the investment that they've got in this, they're building backstops and short circuits all around through the government to make certain that at least the Ministry of Truth exists in some fashion or form. It's going to take a robust effort, to say the least, and one that the Republicans have never mounted. Well, perhaps they did in the era of Ronald Reagan. They moved into the Carter administration, but he had had only 4 years to build that up. That is Carter. They dismantled it relatively quickly, but I don't know what it's going to take now. So what do you think? There are so many moving parts in this thing that it's outrageous to try to keep up with it. And of course, that's part of the design. That's part of their purpose is to make certain that there are so many parts moving that you can identify one or the other at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're faced with now, of course, is it's the third Obama administration, the third term of fundamental transformation, and what he promised on, he delivered on. And remember, in the world of politics, in the history of politics, the only type of government that enacts fundamental transformation are totalitarian governments. Those are the only ones that subscribe to that ideology, that methodology of ruling or controlling. And so now we're faced with a situation where You've got 8 years of Obama. There's a backlash in the Trump years. But then look, they consolidated very quickly and did everything they could to steal that election and knock Trump out. Now Trump has to overcome their efforts, 12 years of work now, plus an effort to jail him. And when he gets back into office, talk about having to unwind, incredible damage that's been done. And even if he's successful, even if he comes in and says, all right, fine, we're not even going to have a CISA organization.
Right.
They're going to engage in lawfare. They're going to find people that are going to say, oh, I'm being harmed because I don't know how to understand the internet. In some way I've been damaged, and I'm going to sue, and I'm going to demand that you reinstate this kind of stuff. This is what the left does. They do it all the time.
Well, they've done one thing certainly very well, and that's cheat.
Yes.
They reversed history in 2020. What is your sense as to how successful they'll be this year? You follow these things closely. I don't see there being anything but a perhaps insurmountable lead on the part of the Mark Eliases and the Marxist-Dem party ahead of the party, unfortunately, that can't be a countervailing influence because it is so feeble, it is so effete that they cannot operate on the level that the Marxist Dems do.
Yeah, well, remember, Marxists and the left, they, number one is power. Power drives everything. They will do anything, say anything, act on anything to consolidate and increase power. So that's their playbook. And if you think that they're suddenly not going to do that, or in some way they're going to abandon that principle, then you're delusional. The only thing they understand and the only thing that they strive for and seek to consolidate is power. So if power is the driver, and the right is busy doing Marquis of Queensberry rules, they're going to get leveled. And so we have to anticipate a tremendous amount of cheating. We have to anticipate efforts to jail Trump as much and as often as humanly possible. You're going to hear a drumbeat of him being a criminal over and over again. And this is a tough battle, and it is not for the faint of heart. This is raw politics, like we've never seen in this country.
And we left out one part of the equation here today. We'll take it up next time. But that is the national corporate media. They are an important element of this assault on America, because they and their refusal to cover the news objectively and honestly, impartially, has stripped this country of one of its great stalwarts and guardians, and that is the Fourth Estate. It is no more, and we have to understand that. Thanks so much, Chris, for being with us, and as always, instructive and helpful, and we appreciate it. And before we go, I want to talk with you about a fantastic deal. As you know, Mike Lindell has a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life. After he invented the world's best pillow, he then created the famous Giza Dream Sheets. They're the best sheets, by the way, you will ever sleep on. My wife and I sleep on them every night and have done for years. Your best night's sleep just got even better, believe it or not. For a limited time, you will get a queen size set for $59.98, king size just $10 more, the lowest prices in history. Mike and MyPillow employees continue to be canceled by those big box stores and attacked by the corporate media. They appreciate all of your great support during these times, and they want to thank you by giving you free shipping on your entire order today. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152 and use promo code Dobbs. You get the famous Giza Dream Sheets, queen size for only $59.98, king size just $10 more. So call 800-977-9152 or go to mypillow.com, promo code Dobbs, to get free shipping on your entire order today. Promo code Dobbs. And please join us for our podcast, The Great America Show each day. Thanks for being with us. Please join us here tomorrow evening. Mike Benz and Congressman Rich McCormick among our guests. Coming up next, the Lindell Report. Stay tuned. God bless you, and God bless America.